Hey, I've been learning how to use ComfyUI from this subreddit, and I just wanted to share how I run these stable diffusion workloads fast and cheap using cloud services. So I didn't want to spend, $1,000 or more on my own GPU because I like using a MacBook and I don't really game or anything. So I just wanted to show the setup that I found works really easily for me. And if you guys like it, then I can also put together a tutorial for how you can put together the setup on both Mac OS and on Windows, because it'll work for either one. Like I mentioned, this demo is really for you if you want to run ComfyUI and Stable Diffusion, but you don't want to spend a bunch of money up front. I'll show you how I actually run this for as little as about 50 cents per hour, and I can turn on and off my servers whenever I want. So this is what my setup really looks like. I'll just explain it really quick. Basically, I run a GPU server in a cloud called Lambda Labs. You may have heard of it before. They're pretty much the least expensive provider of GPUs out there right now. And that's all they do is they just do GPU rentals. The GPU server is ephemeral, so that means that you turn it on and then you discard it whenever you're not using it, so you don't pay for it while you're not using it. So that's really the key to keeping the costs down. And then I keep my ComfyUI and Stable Diffusion setup on a persistent disk that is also saved with Lambda Labs. And it's very inexpensive. It's something like 20 cents per gigabyte per month. So I think I've only spent like 10 cents or something on this storage. And even though the server turns over all the time, I use something called a Python virtual environment. And that allows me to do the entire installation on the hard disk rather than on the physical server. And so every time I get a new server, my installation is actually still here and it works right away. And then to actually access ComfyUI, you see this command I run right here, the ssh-l. If you've used Secure Shell before for things like GitHub or something like this, the -l really just means an SSH tunnel. And so basically what that does is it makes it so I can access the server, right, the ComfyUI server, as if it's actually running on my local laptop. So that's how it actually comes out to be just as easy as running on my local computer. So I'll explain briefly how I do this. Basically, I just run this file called a config file. It's very standard. It's worked this way for decades with Secure Shell. And whenever I go and launch a server, I just fill in the host name with this IP address that I copy from a console, and then the whole thing works. So I'll give you a quick demo and show you how it works. This is Lambda's homepage. So I just sign into my console by going here to Cloud Sign In. And here you can see I don't have any GPU instances running right now. However, you see that I already have this file system where I have my Stable Diffusion and ComfyUI installed. So I'm going to go ahead and make a new instance and show you how this works. So it looks like right now the cheapest instance available are these NVIDIA A10s. You can see this is a very kind of powerful setup right here. We get 30 CPUs and the A10s, which I think even used on eBay, they're running about $3,000 US right now. So quite a beefy graphics card. I live in Vancouver, British Columbia, so California is closest for me. I attach that file system, which has ComfyUI installed on it. So click that, launch the instance, and I promise Lambda that I won't mine cryptocurrency on the server, and then we launch it. So this takes about 2-3 minutes to boot up. So we'll come back and check on this in just a moment. Okay, so we see that the server has booted up. And like I mentioned, these are ephemeral, so it's going to give me a new IP address each time I make a new one. So I am going to go ahead and copy this IP address and put it in my secure shell configuration file, and then we'll be able to log in. Let's go ahead and do that. So I will open a terminal to do this, but you can use a text editor or whatever you would like. And we'll edit this by going to vim.ssh/config. And then this is what my config file looks like. I name my server Lambda Stable Diffusion XL ComfyUI, something descriptive. And let's go ahead and paste in that new IP address right there. Write it out. Okay, now we can start the SSH tunnel to the server. So that command just looks like this on my computer because I named the server this in my config file. So we go ahead and hit enter. It'll ask me to accept the fingerprint. I say yes. And then, as you can see, we get the Lambda GPU Cloud logo right here. Now, there's one more step that I have to do here, which is I have to actually go ahead and start the server, or the ComfyUI server. And the way that works like this, on this GPU server is like this. So if I do an ls-l, we see that my file system is mounted in my home directory, the Stable Diffusion XL file system. I cd into there, and in here I have ComfyUI cloned from the GitHub, change directory into ComfyUI. And then, like I mentioned, I use a Python virtual environment, so I'm not relying on the operating system's Python environment, because that gets blown away every time I close down the server. So to go ahead and start the virtual environment, I run source ComfyUI underscore virtual environment bin activate. And you'll see now my terminal prompt is changed to show me that I'm in that virtual environment. And so from here, I can just run the ComfyUI server like so. And let's see what it tells us. Give it a moment. Okay, tells us we've got an NVIDIA A10. Very nice. And it gave us the IP address. And so even though this is a remote GPU server, because we use SSH tunneling, we should be able to access it exactly as if it's running on our local machine. So let's go ahead and try that IP address. So if we go and put that into our web browser, so localhost port 8188, and we open it up, here we go. We get ComfyUI. So let's go ahead and queue a prompt. So this is 512 by 512, and we'll choose Stable Diffusion XL base and queue it. And let's see how long it takes to run right here. Okay, there we go. So there you have it. That took, I don't know how long, maybe 20 seconds or something. I didn't time it. And we got our output right there. So when I'm done with my server, you get billed per second on these servers. So if I just use it for 30 minutes, then when I want to get rid of it, I just select it and I click terminate. It does give you this kind of scary message right here, erase data on instance. This does not erase the persistent drive, like I mentioned, only erases what's on that ephemeral server. And we have our entire installation on the persistent drive, so we can do this safely. So that terminates right now, and it says we'll not be charged anymore. And yeah, that's it. So that's how the whole thing works. So you see, it only takes me maybe a couple minutes to set up. It's not completely just go ahead and plug and play every time I want to use it, but you know, using this today, it's let's see, only costs, you know, whatever, 75 cents per hour. And if we actually look at my usage, let's see how much I've spent over the past week or so. See, I spent 19 cents today. And with my file system, I've spent a total of 58 cents. So that's it. So if this was helpful, and I hope it was, let me know if you want me to do a more in-depth tutorial for how to actually put this together. It's a little bit different on Windows versus Mac OS, but mostly the same. Hope that helps somebody.